Olá a todos, a todas. Eu sou Suzana Roque, em nome do Instituto Minha Unisinos e HU. Dou as boas-vindas às pessoas que estão participando, assim como aos nossos conferencistas do dia. Desejamos que tenhamos todos um bom evento, e esse evento, então, é mais um que nos permite, então, acompanhar as atividades virtuais com a participação contínua, garantida, através do chat do YouTube e também as perguntas que podem ser feitas via Teams. Convidamos a todos a participar, e se vocês quiserem saber mais sobre a nossa programação, acessem ihu.unisinos.br. Não esqueça de curtir os vídeos, de compartilhar e se inscrever na nossa página, tanto do YouTube quanto para receber a newsletter do IHU. Então, a íntegra desse evento, como nos anteriores, está disponível já a partir deste momento no YouTube. Hoje nós queremos dar especialmente as boas-vindas de todos ao 19º Simpósio Internacional Homo Digitalis, a escalada da algoritmização da vida em tempos de pandemia. E estamos, então, neste momento, com a 4ª conferência do nosso simpósio. A digitalização da vida é um tema tratado pelo IHU há mais tempo, por meio de artigos, de entrevistas e de eventos. Este simpósio, Homo Digitalis, se soma a essas reflexões que já têm sido realizadas e teve em sua concepção o apoio de diferentes programas de pós-graduação da Unisinos. O PPG em Comunicação, o PPG em Saúde Coletiva, em Computação Aplicada, em Gestão e Negócios, em Educação, Economia, Direito, dentre outros. Queremos agradecer especialmente a participação especial dos professores pesquisadores José Roque Jungues, Pedro Gilberto Gomes e Rafael Grohmann, e citando-os, nós queremos simbolizar o nosso agradecimento a tantos, professores e professoras, pesquisadores e pesquisadoras, que têm se envolvido na viabilização deste nosso simpósio, Em princípio foi pensado presencial, mas depois, em função da pandemia, o simpósio está se realizando via online. Além disso, também agradecemos o apoio do fomento da FAPERGS, da Fundação de Amparo à Pesquisa do Estado do Rio Grande do Sul. Quanto à dinâmica do simpósio, conta com conferencistas internacionais que têm gravado exclusivamente para nós estes vídeos, para esse evento, e com o reconhecimento de pesquisadores de diferentes partes do mundo. Essas conferências são debatidas depois por pesquisadores brasileiros, especialmente especialistas, digamos, nesses temas de debate. Neste evento de hoje, nós temos algo muito especial, que o nosso conferencista, além de gravar o vídeo, vai poder responder, e já está ao vivo, responder após seu vídeo e a contribuição do professor Grohmann, vai poder responder as perguntas que todos nós podemos enviar via chat. Para esta 4ª conferência, então, queremos agradecer e receber especialmente ao professor Dr. Antônio Casilli, da Telecom Paris, na França, que vai apresentar a conferência O Futuro do Trabalho e o Mito da Substituição Robótica. Porque o trabalho digital é um ingrediente não tão secreto da inteligência artificial. Esta conferência depois será debatida, será comentada pelo professor Dr. Rafael Grohmann, da Unisinos, a quem desde já, aos 2 professores, nós queremos muito especialmente agradecer. Eu vou apresentar o professor Grohmann, Rafael, depois deste momento. Finalmente, queria destacar que esse evento está sendo transmitido para quem quiser obter certificado pela plataforma do Teams, mas também podem acessar, quem não precisar certificado, pelo YouTube, pelo pela homepage do IHU, e o CEPAT, o Centro de Promoção de Agentes de Transformação, que é um parceiro estratégico do IHU, também está transmitindo. Então, nós queremos lembrar que se você quer se matricular, preencha o formulário no Teams, e se tiver alguma dúvida ou dificuldade, pode entrar em contato conosco, que nós estamos aqui para lhe ajudar. Então, conforme destacado anteriormente, hoje nós temos aqui presencialmente, desde França, ao nosso professor doutor Antônio Casilli, que mesmo que vão fazer a conferência gravada, vocês podem, então, ter garantia de que ele estará, e o professor falará em inglês. E o professor, então, a conferência dele vai durar aproximadamente 1h, 10, 13 minutos, mais ou menos, de duração. Depois, o professor Grohmann, então, fará uma apresentação e após a conferência. Então, nós queremos agora apresentar um pouco do currículo do professor Casilli. O professor Casilli tem um currículo muito extenso, né? Mas nós gostaríamos, então, neste momento, vocês acredito que estejam, né, vendo o rosto do professor Casilli, e já, então, enquanto meus colegas me confirmam que o professor está aqui, por favor, eu agradeço se puderem me confirmar. Então, professor Casilli, então, soyez bienvenue, le bienvenu. O professor Casilli, então, só um instantinho, aqui às vezes a técnica não ajuda, e se fechou, não queria falar o currículo de cor, né? Mas então, aqui, desculpem que acabou fechando o programa, já estou novamente, então. Professor Casilli, então, é titular de Sociologia da Telecom Paris, a Escola de Telecomunicações do Institut Polytechnique de Paris, e é pesquisador do Interdisciplinary Institute on Innovation. Também é pesquisador associado do Centro de Antropologia Interdisciplinar Crítica da École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales, Escola de Estudos Avançados em Ciências Sociais, e, além disso, ele é membro do corpo docente do Nexus Center for Internet and Society, um instituto da Universidade Politécnica de Torino. O professor tem várias publicações. Em função do tempo, só vamos citar algumas. En attendant les robots, enquête sur le travail du clic, é uma publicação de 2019, que poderíamos traduzir esperando por robôs, enquete sobre o trabalho do clique. Tem outro, Liaison numérique vers une nouvelle sociabilité, da editora Seuil, e poderia ser traduzida Conexões Digitais rumo a uma nova sociabilidade. Ele foi coordenador editorial da série documental Invisíveis. Nós temos uma entrevista com o professor Casilli, que vocês podem encontrar no site do IHU, chamada A Internet Aumenta o Capital Social. Então, professor Casilli, seja muito bem-vindo a esse evento, e a todos os participantes também desejamos um bom aproveitamento de reflexão e debate, e damos então passo neste momento ao nosso vídeo. Obrigada.
Hello and welcome to today's presentation. We will discuss automation and how it relies on human digital labor. We will try and answer the question, are robots coming to steal our jobs?
Let's start with some of the titles that the media have been producing in recent years. Robots could replace humans in a quarter of US jobs by 2013. robots replacing human jobs, potentially 200,000 cuts on the horizon, and of course, the eternal question, will robots and in general technologies take our jobs? This vision, this dystopian vision, is conveyed not only by the media, but also by the discourse of experts and of academics. In particular, this idea of hundreds of thousands of jobs disappearing by 2013 has been popularized by a working paper entitled The Future of Employment, published in 2012 by Carl Benedict Frey and Michael Osborne, two researchers of the University of Oxford. According to this paper, the number of jobs destroyed by automation and specifically by machine learning and mobile robotics would amount to 47% of the jobs in a country like the US. Of course, the methodology was questioned and the results were challenged by other studies like the one published pretty soon afterwards by the OECD, showing that the working paper overestimated the number of jobs replaced by automation, and according to this new study, only 9% of jobs are likely to be endangered by automation. This didn't stop the authors, especially Carl Benedict Frey, from repeating the same kind of dystopian prophecy, especially in recent time when COVID-19 hit the entire world, and in several countries lockdown was enforced. And facing the fact that millions and hundreds of millions of people were forced to work from home or to stop working altogether, Carl Benedict Frey and other experts insisted and maintained that in this case automation would kick in, just to face the fact that human beings were in a difficult position when it comes to working together, and especially working in specific locations like factories and offices. So are we facing the end of work, or specifically the end of work as we know it, like an activity that is performed in specific locations and in specific structures and organizations? But again, not everyone agrees with these results, because not everyone agrees with the type of idea underlying papers such as this. And especially some have challenged the very idea that innovation and technological innovation in particular is necessarily conducive to job loss. David Auder, for instance, who is an economist at the MIT, has been explaining and arguing in several articles like this one entitled "Why Are There Still So Many Jobs?" that the productivity gain that technological innovation introduces sometimes can have some unexpected results. Take, for example, automatic cash dispensers that were implemented in banks all around the world since the late 1980s. In this case, one would expect that they would have replaced human bank employees. But what happened actually is that all over the world, the very possibility of opening new bank agencies for less money, less cost than before, encouraged bank owners to open more and more banks, and these in converse determined an increase in the number of people who were employed in the banking sector. And this is only one example, an example of the fact that on the one side, of course, there is the threat of having some types of works destroyed, and in other cases, of course, there's always the possibility of seeing some new jobs emerging, or, like in the case of banking, of seeing an evolution in skills, of the skill set required to work in a bank. Nowadays, a bank employee is not somebody who just counts the cash and gives it to you. This person is sometimes a counselor or a financial advisor, and in some cases has to develop new skills, like, for instance, listening to what the customer or the client is looking for, the kind of investment this customer is envisioning, and so on and so on. More of a psychologist, or in some cases a religious confessor, than just an accountant like it used to be. The fact is that this dystopian prophecy of the end of human labor has been around for centuries, actually. It started at the beginning of the 19th century and at the very beginning of the first industrial revolution with thinkers and economists like Thomas Mortimer or David Ricardo or Andrew Ure that you see depicted here. They all, each in his own way, try to explain that technologies are designed to be labor saving, and these could, in some cases, turn out to be, of course, the end of some activities or of all activities. But this is not necessarily a result that will come to be. In some cases, technologies that are labor saving go hand in hand with technologies that are useful to humans and to humans at work, like Thomas Mortimer used to explain, or in other cases, like David Ricardo argued, some technologies are not necessarily chosen, employed by the capitalist and the investors because they are too expensive, and in some cases human labor is still the best and cheapest option. So how come this notion of robotic replacement of human labor is so prevalent and so widespread? Well, the fact is that when it comes to analyzing technologies, present-day research, especially the one that focuses on socioeconomic consequences of artificial intelligence and intelligent technologies at large, tends to focus on the deployment of AI, on the deployment of artificial intelligence to business process automation. And when one focuses on deployment, well, this person is analyzing something that happens at the end of a productive process. On the contrary, my question, and the one asked by all those who look at the labor necessary to produce artificial intelligence, is what happens before deployment. Let's have a serious look at this knowledge gap that we have today. The fact that we do not know enough about the actual modes of production of machine learning and data-intensive solutions. We need to have a look at data generation, preparation, annotation, and the verification of results of the algorithmic analysis that machine learning solutions are based upon. All these elements bear a considerable social and economic impact, and they also bear a lot of social risks.
Basically, our argument here is that intelligent technologies are predicated on platformization, and platformization is in turn predicated on human digital labor.
To explain this, we first need to ask, why is platformization so important? Well, because platforms put in place a new type of labor that is called digital labor. But what is digital labor precisely? Well, it is the datification and taskification of human activities. By datification, we mean that every human gesture, productive activity and occupation is turned into a data-producing process, and also a process that is managed by data. And then it is also taskified because it is reduced to simple tasks, simple fragmented, atomized behaviors that are able to be connected and mixed together to produce what we now recognize as intelligent technologies. There are three types of digital labor that happen on platforms. The first type is recognized as on-demand labor. The typical Uber, Lyft, or Glovo, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, the activity that, of course, is app-based, but it also is geographically sticky, is connected to an urban area, to a city, a neighborhood. You cannot ask for a driver in Sao Paulo when you live in Salvador do Bahia. And of course, given this, these activities have been impacted heavily by COVID-19 to an extent, because of course we have lost a lot of Uber drivers, but on the other side, the visibility and the sheer political and social force of riders and of delivery operators is now bigger than before the pandemic. Then there is a second family of digital labor activities, what is called micro work. Micro work is a type of activity that is not that well known all around the world, but is pervasive, is present everywhere in several countries, and is performed by millions of people. In some cases, it is performed by users of specialized platforms, such as Amazon Mechanical Turk, where if you are a worker, you can look for simple jobs. They are called micro tasks, and they just pay you a few cents in exchange for an activity that lasts, in some cases, less than a minute. So you work less than a minute and you earn less than a cent in some cases. This is not exactly the kind of activity that you would look for if you were looking for a stable income source. Nevertheless, in several countries, given the political and economic problems that some developing countries are experiencing, this type of activity is becoming more and more popular. And you probably know people that, especially since COVID-19 kicked in, started working for this kind of platforms that sometimes disguise themselves as activities where you earn some money or you just click on things and you don't know exactly. We will see in a minute what you click on and what you are doing exactly. Finally, there is the third type of digital labor. It is called social networked labor. It is the activity that runs the social media and in general the, well, non-specialized platforms such as Google, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and so on and so on. Of course, you might think that this is only limited to the activity of content producers, and of course there's a lot of that. But to an extent, each one of us, even if we never produce posts or images or videos, well, we produce data and metadata. And for this, we are somehow value producers for these platforms. There are other activities that are networked and that are very important to make these platforms exist. For instance, I'm thinking about the moderators. These moderators are those who filter and flag the content that is considered problematic. And of course, they have been heavily impacted and affected by COVID-19. You have probably noticed that if you have, I don't know, flagged a content on Twitter, for instance, you have received a message since March basically saying, yes, thank you for flagging this content. Unfortunately, our teams of moderators are working, well, not a full effect because of COVID-19. They cannot always work from home. In some cases, they are micro workers. In some cases, they can work from home. But given the sensitive type of data that they managed, because they have to look into your content, your profile, your private messages, well, in some cases, they simply cannot do it from home, from their home where there are, you know, other people and children and so on and so on. let's start by analyzing on-demand labor. And of course, let's focus on probably its most prominent platform, Uber, which not only had an actual bona fide cultural success, because it even became an expression to Uberize something, is to make it more like Uber, but it also came up with an innovation model that is paradigmatic because it impacts heavily the way labor is organized. Uber embodies a specific way to organize human labor, not only because it is famous for being controversial, because it describes its drivers as partners and do not hire them, but mainly because those drivers are first and foremost data providers. According to several of them interviewed in the media, a good chunk of their time is devoted to waiting for their work to be required. And while they wait, they are on the Uber app, the mobile app, and they produce data. According to some estimates, only 41% of their time is actually used to drive from point A to point B, but the rest is only time that is described as dead miles, which is an expression that describes the fact that these are useless hours, and these hours are actually spent providing data to the platform. What type of data are produced by Uber drivers? Well, first and foremost, are personal data that are relative to their own profile. They have to choose the right picture, of course, type in their names and provide a number of personal informations which are important to them working for Uber. Subsequently, Uber drivers produce data whenever they enroll for specific time slots in order to work at specific hours that will allow them to earn more. Then they have to send and receive messages, and these are data that are exchanged with the dispatch central, but also with other drivers and, of course, customers. Location data are very important too. They are produced mainly by using several apps in order to negotiate the best possible paths between the starting point of a ride and its destination, especially because Uber itself, the app, has the terrible habit of proposing or suggesting paths that are straight lines. But of course, this is impossible in a regular city. And so Uber drivers have to go back and forth between the app, the Uber app, and other apps such as Waze, which provide better GPS paths and they take into account, problems, traffic, accidents, and so on and so on. And finally, there's the reputation score. The reputation score is really the sword of Damocles hanging over the heads of Uber drivers, because mainly this is the score that they achieve based on the markings, on the points that are left by the users, by the riders themselves. Whenever I take a ride in an Uber cab, I usually left a review of the performance of my driver, if he was a good driver, if he was on time, if the vehicle, the car was clean enough, if the person was available to talk with, not too talkative, not too silent, and so on and so on. And this very subjective and in some cases extremely arbitrary way of reviewing their performance are really extremely important to them, because if their score goes under a certain threshold, in some cases it's mainly 4.7, they are deactivated, which is as close as it gets to getting fired by Uber. I mean, as close as it gets on a platform which never hired you, the driver, in the first place. All this data is necessary for Uber's algorithmic matching, which in this case is crucial to put in place a system of algorithmic management of their labor. By algorithmic management, we mean that labor on the platform is regulated by algorithms, which is not always the case, seldom the case actually, in regular firms, in traditional businesses where management is established based on rules or, for instance, on criteria such as planned action. In this case, there is a real-time adaptation of the request for labor. The request is, of course, directed towards the Uber drivers, and of course the drivers need to be incentivized to provide this labor. And all this is achieved via specific algorithms. The patented surge pricing algorithm that is used by Uber to match offer and demand, supply and demand of labor is, well, not a secret. To be fair, Uber's R&D researchers published several articles explaining how this algorithm works. Let's take this example, which was published in an article of 2015, which describes a very specific situation that took place in New York on March 21st, 2015. After the concert of pop star Ariana Grande, several thousand people were at the Madison Square Garden and needed a ride home. So several thousand people connected to the app, the mobile app, and based on the fact that a huge increase in the number of connected users, especially in a specific location, was taking place, the algorithm was able to estimate a surge in the demand for rides, which of course prompts another consequence, another action. The algorithm established that the price of each ride should be multiplied by a coefficient that, of course, meant for consumers, for riders, that the same ride that would have been, I don't know, $10 before, now becomes $40, $50, $70. And of course, for Uber drivers, this is good news, because this means that they can earn more for the same ride, which is why on their app, on the side, of course, of the drivers, the situation changes. The map of the city of New York changes because a new red zone happens. A red zone is a zone where prices are higher, and so drivers are incentivized, are motivated, encouraged to move towards that point. And in this case, it was the area surrounding the Madison Square Garden, which was exactly what happened. Several hundred, and in some cases over time, thousands of drivers moved towards the Madison Square Garden area, and they picked up the riders, the consumers that were ready to pay for a higher price. In other cases, some customers decided not to spend, I don't know, $40 or $70, but to wait for the price to go back to normal. And so in this case, they spent even more time on the platform producing data themselves. All the data that is produced either by the drivers and by the riders, the customers of Uber, well, it is, of course, important because it is monetized. It is data that is turned into money because Uber sells this data to, I don't know, cities or to brands or to other platforms for them to do whatever they want. Mainly it is for targeted advertising and for traffic optimization in city and municipalities. But there is also another use for data, and this use is mainly data for automation. Data are used to train a specific type of automated process, which of course for Uber is their driverless cars, which is very important to stress the fact that they describe it as driverless. These autonomous vehicles, they are of course imagined as some kind of sci-fi prototype of a boudoir on wheels where nobody would actually drive and everybody would simply be a passenger. The situation is also different. The situation is different because as of today, no level 5 automated connected vehicles exist. According to CEOs and officials of both Tesla and Volkswagen, we will never see anything after level 3. And level 3 is, well, the limited automation we know of today, where, of course, somebody is still driving these cars, but this person is not described as a driver. He or she is described as a driving operator, somebody who is there in order to avoid that these cars crash into something, or to help other passengers, or to take the wheel in a situation which could turn out to be fatal, because of course a car could kill somebody. The fact that these the work of these driving operators is so underestimated, so de-emphasized, and ultimately made invisible by platforms themselves has led to some horrifying consequences, such as the very first human casualties of a person killed by a driverless car, so to speak. That happened in March 2018 in Arizona. You see here two pictures. The first one with the red circle is taken from the point of view of the car. So it is the camera that points towards the exterior of the car, and the person in the red circle is, of course, the victim of this accident. This picture was taken 1 second before the fatal accident. Now let's switch to the second picture. This was taken from the camera pointing towards the interior of the car 1 second before the accident. And as you can see, there is somebody sitting at the driver's seat. This person is not sleeping. It is not, he is not, or she is not watching, I don't know, TV show on a tablet. This person is actually following the progression of the car on the tablet. So this is to say that in this case, if this person had received a better training, if it were made clear to her that her work was crucial in order to avoid situations like this, if Uber ultimately had not underestimated the importance of somebody sitting in the driver's seat, this accident could have been avoided. Now, when I say that companies such as Uber make everything to make this human labor invisible, this is not a metaphor, this is not a figure of speech, this is something they actually do. They hide these workers, they hide them inside the cars. as you can see, for instance, from this picture, this is not a meme, this is not a humorous pictures or photo montage. This is an actual prototype of a so-called driverless car developed by Ford in the US. And as you can see, the driver has been disguised as a car seat in order to make to give the impression, to produce the illusion that this is a driverless car. Apart from the human workers that are still needed inside the cars, there are also other workers, an entire other category, which allows us to switch to the second type of digital labor, microwork. And these workers are not inside the car, they are in a remote location. And they are crucial to actually help the car learn to drive. Because, of course, self-driving car is based on artificial intelligence solutions and on machine learning, and whoever says machine learning also says that somebody has to teach this car to, ride and to recognize different objects, another car, a tree, and so on and so on. Who are the persons who teach the cars to do what they promise to do? According to Anthony Lewandowski, that you see depicted here, he used to be the head of the commercial vehicle part of Uber, Otto. These persons can be described as human robots. Why? Are they some kind of anthropomorphic automata? No, they are basically the humans who teach the robots, in this case, self-driving car, to do what they do, meaning they are the trainers of the data that are used for this artificial intelligence. A self-driving car actually is a communicating device. It communicates with everything. It communicates with the platform it is connected to. It communicates with other connected vehicles, but it also captures a lot of data of objects or behaviors surrounding them. If somebody is crossing the street, the self-driving car is supposed to record that and then process it and act consequently. But in order for the car to learn how to act consequently, we need to inject quality data, which means annotated data, filtered data, documented data into the artificial intelligence that manages the car. Data, as you probably know, are not annotated from the beginning. They need to be annotated, they need to be transformed from raw data to enriched data. So there are in the world several platforms that provide this service. They take raw data, in this case images recorded by self-driving cars, and they, draw lines around cars, traffic lights, lane marks, arrows, houses, people crossing the street, and so on, and then they add tags, and then they provide other contextual metadata. All these is usually done by commercial platforms who tend to specialize on this kind of data annotation. And probably one of the best platforms was Mighty AI. I say was because last year Uber decided to, buy it, and now Mighty AI is no more. It is simply Uber Research. And so Uber has created a platform which annotates this data. And who are the people who annotate this data? According to Uber's own commercial images, the trainers of this data are usually young, blonde, white, and they work in this kind of startup-like environment. It's an extremely relaxed way of working. There's a boy and a girl. Probably there is some, romantic tension going on. So it is an ideal setting for work. Well, the reality is entirely different. These human robots, these people who are hired to teach the self-driving cars how to drive, are usually hired in developing or emerging countries. There are some entire industrial ecosystems that specialize on providing this kind of data. For instance, in the Indian city of Bangalore or Hyderabad, which are, of course, the two Indian Silicon Valleys, there are huge amounts of people who are now specializing in enriching this data. The image that you see here is, of course, one of those workers. It's not the children who work, it's the father, but the working conditions and in general the vibe this image conveys is entirely different from the previous one, which is the one used by Uber to communicate with their investors and the media. Why do platforms need to hire this type of workers? Well, the reason is that the artificial intelligence solutions that we are producing, we as a society, are, well, not exactly the kind of general artificial intelligence, the human level artificial intelligence that is presented in media stories or even in the most visionary articles of pioneers of artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence solutions that exist on the market resembles, well, virtual assistants such as Siri or Cortana, the ones we have in our smartphones, or Alexa or Google Home, which are used for smart speakers, or it is the kind of artificial intelligence that is used for connected cars, autopilot system. So it is not a general artificial intelligence, it is something of a narrow artificial intelligence. This is the definition that is provided by Ray Kurzweil, which is the chief engineer at Google, and this narrow artificial intelligence specializes in specific actions or decisions or domains of human activity, and mostly this type of artificial intelligence is based on machine learning, any kind of machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, generative adversarial networks, convolutionary networks, other types of networks, but mainly they are based on statistical learning, and statistical learning relies on data. So we need data to produce these narrow artificial intelligence solutions. In order to train these narrow artificial intelligence solutions, some platforms have specialized in producing these annotated data, such as Amazon Mechanical Turk. Amazon Mechanical Turk was invented by Jeff Bezos, or at least launched by him in 2006. It relies on a patent that was presented in 2001, and the name has nothing to do with Turkey, but with a legendary automaton invented in the 18th century. The Mechanical Turk was a chess player, a robotic chess player, disguised as an Ottoman Turk, which was invented by Baron von Kempelen, an Austrian inventor, in 1769. And this was supposed to be the first artificial intelligence, because this robot was supposed to challenge and, of course, beat at chess any human adversary. Now, there was a slight problem, actually. Actually, this robot was a hoax. It was not entirely robotic. It did not simulate the cognitive processes of a chess player, but it simply contained inside its mechanism somebody, a human being, who was able to move the pieces on the chessboard. Now, Who was this person is up to interpretation. There are several hypotheses. Some say that this person was a soldier who had his legs amputated after a battle. In other cases, the person was described as a small, skinny boy. In other cases, it was described. He was described as a small person. And well, in any case, he was never described as a grandmaster of chess. This person was not a genius. He was, well, simply somebody who had some kind of disability because it was too small, or because he was living with dwarfism, or because he had his legs amputated, or because he was too small to actually work. And actually, Amazon Mechanical Turk is not based on the idea of putting to work people with disability, not necessarily, but the idea that in order to achieve a good intellectual performance, we do not need geniuses, but we need normal people. But well, it is the same underlying Amazon Mechanical Turk, except that in the case of the Mechanical Turk of the 18th century, it was only one person moving one robot, and in the case of Amazon Mechanical Turk, there are 100,000 persons producing what Jeff Bezos described as artificial intelligence, so fake artificial intelligence. Of course, when Jeff Bezos says that Amazon Mechanical Turk produces artificial intelligence, it's a bit of an exaggeration, or, well, in some cases, the point is not always that this platform can be used to simulate an artificial intelligence system, but that this platform is important to train, and in some cases to verify, what artificial intelligence system and technologies do. For instance, imagine that you have to, I don't know, train an OCR software solution that recognizes the content of a Walmart ticket, such as the one that you see in this picture. Or, for instance, that you have, again, to train a self-driving car to, well, drive. Or I don't know, that you have to train the algorithm for a Spotify playlist generator. You need to, of course, teach this algorithm to recognize different music genres and how to put them together, how to put the music together. And so in order to do this, you have to produce data, and this data need to be, of course, annotated and enriched. Companies who want to automate some business processes, such as, for instance, accounting or any other type of process, they can go on Amazon Mechanical Turk and hire for a limited amount of time persons who will perform microtasks. Now, given the fact that these microtasks take a few seconds, in some cases a few minutes to be performed, hiring is not exactly the right word. These persons are recruited and then disposed with, meaning that after they have finished performing their microtask, nothing connects them to the client, to the person who wanted their work in the first place. And the workers are paid very, very poorly, in some cases 1 or 2 cents to perform these tasks. There is no actual contract that connects workers with their companies or with the platform itself. The only thing that Amazon want the micro workers to sign is just a general agreement, like the term of services that anyone would click on for using, I don't know, a platform or an app. But then after that, they are encouraged to perform tasks which are really important to train algorithms and to train artificial intelligence. These tasks include, for instance, recognizing languages or types of conversation, transcribing words, annotating images, or isolating elements, or providing keywords. These are extremely important for natural language processing or for image recognition. Now, again, the problem is always who is performing these micro tasks, who accepts to work for such an unstable and volatile type of employment, which is not an employment, to be fair, it's just an activity, and it's an informal activity. It's precarious at best. It is poorly paid. Well, whenever companies are asked who are their micro workers, they always come up with the same type of promotional commercial images that we have seen in place for Uber, for instance. These data workers, these data providers, are described as young professionals living in a country of the global north. They are usually white, they are usually blonde. Well, blonde is not important, but the point is that the filled reality of the teams of people who actually train and generate this data is entirely different. As you can imagine, people who are willing to perform such a volatile type of job for such a small amount of money originate from countries which have very low average income, like developing countries like the Philippines or Bangladesh. And so in a way, this type of micro work can be compared or equated to a type of offshoring, meaning outsourcing to a distant location, usually a poorer country where wages are lower and where people are willing to work in worse conditions. But in this case, this is not an offshoring that demands for a company to open up, I don't know, a factory or an office in a third country. They can actually do a virtual offshoring, meaning that it is a platform-based outsourcing of business processes to a remote location with very limited or no investment at all. They do not even need to hire these persons because the micro workers that usually use these platforms are not hired. Amazon is not the only company that profits from micro work to train artificial intelligence solutions. Microsoft, for instance, has been using it for years to calibrate and optimize its products. For instance, the search engine Bing needs to be, made better, let's say, with the help of micro workers who are recruited on a Microsoft proprietary platform. Microsoft's proprietary platform is called UHRS, which means Universal Human Reference System. The principle is exactly the same, except that it is not open to anyone, like Amazon's Mechanica Turk. It is just for Microsoft to train its own artificial intelligences. But Microsoft has also shown that, users can be turned into micro workers, regular, simple internet users, which was the case for the TAI experiment. TAI, T-A-Y, was a chatbot, or a very simplistic type of artificial intelligence, which was supposed to simulate the behavior and the personality of a teenage girl. The problem, or actually the challenge, was that Microsoft decided not to train this artificial intelligence in-house, but to, leave it in the wild so that internet users would train it. Well, big mistake, because in a few days' time, several internet users, especially trolls coming from the 4chan community, decided to organize what can be described as adversarial training, which means teaching Tay to act, problematically. And especially they taught this chatbot several unpopular, politically biased opinions about drug use or minorities or blasphemy and some other things that ultimately made Microsoft decide to discontinue the experiment, which of course was a fail, a big one at that, but also demonstrated how important training is in, well, creating an AI. AI does not simply exist. It needs to be trained. So quality training is important. Other companies such as Google do exactly the same thing that Microsoft did with TAI, but they have, let's say, more success. For instance, when we use Google's search engine, well, this engine works and works well because behind it there is a decade-long platform called Rater Hub, where micro workers are recruited to evaluate and check on Google's search algorithms results. Google's Rater Hub, meaning their microwork platform, was introduced around 2007. Basically, it works like this. Whenever you, meaning an internet user, uses Google's search engine for a query to look for something up, somebody else receives on Rater Hub a task that consists in checking if the results submitted by the Google search engine were appropriate to you. For instance, you were looking for I don't know, a drugstore in Lille in France, but the search engine came up with results from Brooklyn in the US. There's something wrong and something needs to be corrected. So in this case, the rater, the micro worker, can put a red evaluation, which means that that was a bad example, a bad result. Or in other cases, for instance, some search results produce, I don't know, websites which are not appropriate to the user. For instance, they are adult websites, or websites that contain fake news, or websites that are politically extreme. And in this case, these websites can be flagged by the micro workers on Rater Hub. Again, because they are micro workers, they are paid by the task, so they receive a small amount of money, usually some cents, every time they check one search result. But one can make the point that any Google search engine user is, to an extent, a data provider. Every time we search for something up on Google, we are teaching the search algorithms, well, to look for the most common occurrences of a term, of a sentence, of an expression. For instance, if we look for New York tea, most probably we are looking for New York Times, and this is true because Google has had millions, in this case it's probably billions, of examples produced by the users themselves to train its algorithm upon. But of course, one might say, whenever we use a search engine, this is not work. And from a legal point of view, it is not. And even from an economic point of view, it would be extremely difficult to demonstrate that something which is not paid for can be considered as work. Well, there is actually something else going on with Google. Google is extremely good at inviting people to produce data for its platforms and its services in general. And in some cases, it has been pretty transparent about the fact that what they do while producing data is work. Well, a specific type of work. They call it crowd work, the work of a crowd of users, but this was exactly the case with reCAPTCHA. reCAPTCHA is something that you have encountered clearly in your life. It is the type of a page that appears whenever you want to retrieve a password or leave a message in a, I don't know, in a forum or an online message board or any kind of activity of this type. Then you have, in this case, to demonstrate you are not a bot. And how do you demonstrate that you are not a bot? At the beginning, meaning in the early 2010s, it was done via transcription of biased words. So in this case, for instance, it's morning upon. These words were difficult to be read, and in this case, a human was able to do it, and a bot was not. And so if you just transcribe these two words, you could demonstrate that you got the answer right. But in the same time, whenever you were transcribing these words, you were also teaching Google Books OCR technologies to read scanned books. The problem is that the Google Books were scanned, meaning that there was somebody usually putting the page on the scanner, and in some cases the page was corrupted, distorted, all the scan was not readable. Well, not readable by a bot, but somebody like a human being with a bit of attention might be able to interpret these words. And this is what happens, or used to happen actually, when somebody was transcribing words for reCAPTCHA. Now, the problem is that I said it used to happen because in 2015, a few hundred persons in Massachusetts decided to start a class action against Google to be reclassified as employees of the platform, because for years they had been performing this kind of reCAPTCHA. And this was, despite the fact that the judge decided against this, a moment of truth for Google, because they said, okay, now people have reached awareness of the fact that this is not simply a service, it's not a game, it is actually work they are producing for us. And so Google decided to discontinue the old style of reCAPTCHA and to come up with something new. In 2015, reCAPTCHA was replaced by no captcha reCAPTCHA, which is the visual reCAPTCHA that you are familiar with today. Sometimes when you want to, I don't know, receive an information or access a website, you have to, again, select squares with street signs, cars, statues. Why? Well, because in this case, you are not teaching Google Books OCR software to do what it does, but you are mainly training the artificial intelligence of Waymo car. Waymo is the name of Alphabet's, meaning Google, branch specialized in self-driving car. So basically you are teaching self-driving cars to recognize street signs, traffic lights, and other cars. You are performing the work that for Uber is actually performed by people who are paid. Clearly and very simply, they are poorly paid, but at least they are paid. In this case, you are not paid. So again, what is the difference between micro work and the work that is provided by a user? Well, one might say you are not paid, yes. You are producing data, yes, but this cannot be construed as work, because mainly you are receiving a service in exchange for your contribution. Well, the point is that this service you receive in exchange is not always an actual service. And by actual, I mean a service which is ready to be put on market. In many cases, these are prototypes of services. For instance, translation softwares like Bing or Google Translator, they provide, well, a try. They attempt to translate based, of course, on some examples, but as you know, whenever they come up with a translation, they also try to invite you to suggest a better one. So in this case, whenever you click on suggest an edit on Google Translate, you are invited to provide your own translation. And what happens to your suggestion? Well, it is included in a training database, and it is used to, well, obtain a better quality at this translation software. The same things goes, for instance, for Facebook. Facebook sometimes provide automatic translations of posts and messages. And again, on Facebook, you can click on a specific button and you are invited to come up with a better translation. The same thing goes with Facebook. You provide a translation. The translation is included in a training database, and the translation is used to make these automatic translation software better. And Facebook too, to be fair, has come up with its own service that invites people to perform free micro work. If you go to facebook.com/editor, you can be invited, for instance, to provide information for, I don't know, a theater or a restaurant you are checking in, or, I don't know, a movie page or a book. In this case, you are invited to, I don't know, check the address of the venue or the hours, and what do you receive in exchange? Well, not money, but you receive badges and some symbolic rewards that consist in putting you in contact with other, well, hidden micro workers, other Facebook editors. So in this case, we are seeing that this type of activity is presented as a challenge, is presented as a community activity, but it's blurring the lines between work and consumption. Am I a simple Facebook user, or am I actually working for Facebook? Facebook is a platform, and as such, it captures the value produced by the community of its users. In this case, Facebook is a lean platform, is a platform which does not own the content it produces and it distributes. So from this point of view, it is something halfway between a factory, a content factory, and a content marketplace. A content marketplace does not mean that Facebook sells the content produced by its users. Whenever you post a message or, I don't know, a picture of your cat, the content is not important. Facebook is not like Flickr, it's not like YouTube. It does not monetize content that way, but it does monetize content by looking at the metadata, which are used to, well, they are made available to data brokers or to advertising agencies or to brands that can eventually use it to personalize advertising towards you. But like with many other platforms, data monetization is not the only important activity. Data is also crucial for automation, as we have stated before. Consider one example or a specific activity going on Facebook: content moderation. Content moderation is the thing that allows you to, well, look at Facebook and never encounter, or at least in the best possible case, never encounter violent images or vile messages or insulting adult content, which is not always appropriate. So how does it happen? Of course, Facebook insists, maintains that it is done via AI. So there is an artificial intelligence that is so performant that we never see any problematic content on their platform. But the situation is entirely different. there are teams of people who are recruited and who work in the same conditions, more or less, than micro workers on Amazon Mechanical Turk or Rater Hub. And these people do not rate content or produce data or train data like the others. They actually are paid or micro-paid to, I don't know, watch videos and evaluate if these videos are appropriate or not, or I don't know, judge pictures, consider if they are pornographic or simply erotic or suggestive, or read messages and eventually decide if this message can be sent to somebody on Facebook and reach a certain audience. So again, it's a moderation work that is performed by humans, and these humans are paid. Again, in this case, it is clearly work, despite the fact that these people are poorly paid and not always in countries where they have a choice from the workforce access point of view. But something is happening on Facebook when it comes to content moderation, because again, users, simple users, people who are not paid to do it, are actively involved in this activity. For instance, whenever you look at something and you consider this something to be offensive to you, you can click on an action button and you are invited to flag that content. What happens when you flag it, and when you also provide details as to who can be offended and what is the content about? Is it violence? Is it pornographic? Is it insulting? And so on and so on. So what happens is that your content is not automatically banned. It is sent to a moderator, and this human moderator decides if the content is appropriate or not. So again, there is some type of human labor at the beginning, because no content gets moderated if somebody does not flag it, if users do not flag it. But again, there is also some human work at the end of this process, because there is a human decision, one of the content moderator, that eventually decides to ban something. And in the middle, well, artificial intelligence is nowhere to be seen. The other point is that content, again, is only one aspect of Facebook's production and value capture. When it comes to Facebook, the key is always data. And data are produced on that platform via clicks, meaning that we simply have to click on something to share it or to add reactions to it. And in this case, an argument can be made that, well, regular users of Facebook are pretty much like click producers. And these click producers are a specific category of workers that are called click farmers. Click farms are services such as this one that sometimes are disguised as websites or platforms where you can simply sign up and, well, get paid for likes, or get paid to click on something, and or get paid to provide a good review for an app or a website. This is usually the website that is used by, I don't know, a student that wants to earn some extra bucks, or I don't know, somebody who is in dire straits and wants to have some extra money at the end of the month. But of course, the situation in some emerging and developing countries is entirely different. And these click farms are not used by people who want some extra money, but people who rely on them to actually earn their primary income. And so click farmers are located not from home. They do not work from home. They are located in actual click farms, which are brick and mortar places, like this one, where one person is paid, admittedly very little, to go from one smartphone to the other and to click on content that they are paid to click upon. The way artificial intelligence and the digital labor that is necessary to produce it is perceived in the global north and in the global south diverge. And this demands better and in-depth inquiry. First of all, let's focus on the location of companies that produce or at least sell artificial intelligence solutions. They are located in global north countries such as the US, of course Europe, and then Australia, Korea, and Japan, to name a few Asian countries or Pacific countries. And then, of course, there are big players located nowadays in China and in India. But when it comes to the labor, well, the labor is not always on site, meaning that companies that are in the US do not always recruit data laborers in the US themselves. Sometimes, or in many cases actually, they recruit them in the Philippines or in India or in the Southeast Asian countries such as those ones. And in some cases also in South America. South America is interesting because it is nowadays exploding on the global digital labor market. There are an increasing number of persons located in Colombia or significantly in Venezuela. This is understandable, of course, given the political and economic situation over there. A lot of people are also located in Brazil, as some ongoing researchers tend to attest, but they do not always work from Northern American countries. They also work for Spanish-speaking countries in Europe, of course. And when it comes to Europe, of course, not the entire continent speaks English or Spanish or German, but in many cases there is a significant number of persons who speak French, like in, of course, France, Belgium, Switzerland, and other parts of Europe. And in this case, French-speaking data laborers are recruited in former colonies of the French Empire and the Republic that are located in Africa. And so this tends to consolidate some let's say, post-colonial equilibria, or at least disparities of power. The situation in China is more complicated because China, in a way, has such a huge internal labor market, and in this case, they can, in some cases, recruit digital laborers and micro workers in Southeast Asia, but in many cases, they just recruit them internally, meaning that they are Chinese working for Chinese companies that produce automation, or at least say they are producing automation.
So after all is said and done, here is the takeaway message I want to leave you with. We are waiting for robots like, in Beckett, people wait for Godot, waiting for something to happen, complete automation, probably, that will never come to be without the contribution of human digital labor. So while we wait for robots, something is happening to the way we work and the way we work on platforms. Because, of course, if robots do not take away our jobs, this should not sound as good news to you. Because in the meantime, there is something that is happening. Works are becoming more precarious. In some cases, they are not protected, socially speaking, the way they were. And, of course, this human activity is constantly made invisible by what we call automation. So we should take these into account while we design policies and social movements for the future. Thank you very much.
Professor Casilli, nós queremos agradecer muito esta brilhante contribuição que nos faz refletir com muitos dados o futuro do trabalho e esse mito da substituição robótica e por que o trabalho digital é um ingrediente não tão secreto, né, da inteligência artificial. Então, neste momento, nós, ao agradecermos, também queremos convocar ao professor Rafael Grohmann, que ele, conforme anunciado previamente, agora fará algumas considerações e fará um debate, né, sobre esse tema da conferência. Logo em seguida, nós vamos abrir para as perguntas que podem ser já feitas através do Teams ou da plataforma do YouTube. Professor Grohmann, muito obrigado, sempre muito gentil para aceitar as nossas propostas. Ele é um colaborador, né, e um elaborador também deste simpósio, né, um mentor, poderíamos dizer. Então, vou só dar algumas notas do extenso currículo do professor. Ele é professor do programa de pós-graduação em Ciências da Comunicação da Universidade do Vale do Rio dos Sinos, Unisinos. Ele tem doutorado e mestrado em Ciências da Comunicação pela Universidade de São Paulo, pela USP, e realizou um estágio de pós-doutoramento na UFRJ. Ele é editor das revistas Compós e Fronteiras, Estudos Mediáticos, e é criador-editor da newsletter da DigiLabor, coordenador do GT Recepção, Circulação e Usos Sociais das Mídias, da Compós, e ele é também integrante do grupo de pesquisa Processos Comunicacionais, Epistemologias, Mediatização, Mediações e Recepção, chamado Processo Com, que é da Unisinos, e também do Centro de Pesquisa em Comunicação e de Trabalho da USP. O professor Rafael foi professor e coordenador do mestrado profissional em jornalismo da FIAM-FAM, de 2015 a 2018, e professor de mestrado em comunicação da Faculdade Casper Ribeiro. Foi professor contratado, temporário, na USP, e ele possui graduação em Ciências Sociais pela Universidade Federal do Juiz de Fora, tendo experiência em comunicação, trabalho, outras questões que, em função de tempo, eu prefiro encurtar. Só saliento que no IHU nós publicamos uma interessante entrevista chamada Futuro do Mercado de Trabalho Brasileiro pode ser dependência 4.0. Então, se quiserem acessar, ihu.unisinos.br. Rafael, com você a palavra, né, nesse momento, o professor Rafael, após a sua exposição, ele vai também fazer a mediação das perguntas, que podem ser feitas em português, ele vai traduzir gentilmente para o inglês, assim como as respostas do professor Casilli, que está aqui em direto para responder às perguntas após a colocação do professor Rafael. Com você a palavra, obrigada.
Bom dia a todo mundo do IHU, boa tarde para o Antônio Casilli, que está por aí, não sei onde ele está, na França ou em qualquer outro lugar. Muito obrigado, IHU, pelo convite e por essa grande programação. Ontem teve Jack Till, já teve Nick Coldry e Felix Talder, com Fernanda Bruno, Norval Baitello, ontem com Rafael Zanata. É uma grande programação, uma alegria colaborar com o IHU nessa jornada e uma excelente apresentação do professor Antônio Casilli. Eu vou falar em português, ele vai reagindo às vezes aqui, se entender algumas coisas, e depois eu endereço umas três perguntas em inglês para ele. E só falo para quem estiver aí que eu não pretendo fazer uma tradução completa, porque eu não conseguiria, ao mesmo tempo, pensar o tema e tentar fazer uma tradução, enfim, e isso é complicado, mas a gente tenta na medida do possível. Um primeiro ponto que eu traria, assim, tentar não repetir o que já está nessa brilhante apresentação do Antônio, trazer algumas provocações. A primeira, em relação a essas discussões sobre o futuro do trabalho que dominam a nossa área, em um primeiro plano, com uma retórica coach, LinkedIn, do que o Ronald Pusser vai chamar de um Mac Mindfulness, de como que os youtubers acabam dominando um pouco desse discurso do que é o futuro do trabalho, 20 anos após as pessoas acharem que a questão do trabalho estava no fim. Então, nunca foi tão trend falar em futuro do trabalho de um ponto de vista hegemônico, dominante. E como que essa agenda também é cooptada por grandes empresas e pelas grandes plataformas. Um exemplo brasileiro é que ontem uma grande universidade brasileira lançou um plano de trabalho para uma pesquisa sobre gig economy, futuro do trabalho, e ela é apoiada, isso no plano de trabalho está, ela é apoiada pelo iFood, que é uma das principais plataformas de entrega de alimentos. Então, como é que a pesquisa acadêmica, em muitos sentidos, também acaba enredada por essas questões, dessas relações entre universidades, empresas, plataformas, de maneira que o David Harvey chega a dizer que hoje não precisa mais de think tanks liberais, porque muitos deles estão na própria universidade, e como que é um combate a ser feito. Uma outra questão, entrando mais em argumentos acadêmicos, e que o Antônio fala muito bem, que é como essa agenda de futuro do trabalho teve um foco excessivo na questão da perda de empregos e da substituição por robôs, e esse mito também do que seriam esses robôs, do ponto de vista tanto de direita e de esquerda, dizendo, olha, também automatizando tudo, a gente vai entrar no comunismo de luxo totalmente automatizado, como há uma certa ingenuidade de um lado e de outro. E aí trago argumentos de três colegas que complementam, a meu ver, o argumento do Antônio. E um é o da Janine Berg, da Organização Internacional do Trabalho, que vai falar de um foco mais em job quality. Eu não sei, na verdade, depois a gente pode perguntar para o Antônio, eu tenho as minhas dúvidas também em o que seria job quality, qual seria essa agenda de job quality, e não saberia se é a melhor expressão. Eu ando muito impressionado com o lançamento recente, faz uns 45 dias, do livro do colega Aaron Benanav, Automation and Future of Work, em que ele fala, é um argumento que já estava nos textos que ele escreveu para New Left Review no ano passado, de que a automação ou a perda de empregos ou o desemprego não é algo diretamente ligado à automação, mas a recessão econômica e a crescente desindustrialização, e mostra isso com argumentos muito contundentes. Ele até fala, eu, por um lado, até me apaixonei por alguns aceleracionistas quando era mais jovem, e faz críticas também a essas perspectivas. Um outro que me parece que faz um pouco essa autocrítica é o Nick Dyer-Whiteford, no último livro dele, In Human Power, em que ele fala que a inteligência artificial é uma condição geral de produção, mas, ao mesmo tempo, reflete, eu acho que até como uma própria autocrítica em relação ao marxismo autonomista, de que há um ciclo de lutas envolvendo inteligência artificial e capital e essas empresas dentro... E um dos aspectos é o ponto que o Casilli coloca como muito forte, que é o trabalho por trás da inteligência artificial. De um ponto, avançando aí alguns exemplos em torno do que a conferência trouxe, eu acrescentaria um debate que está sempre... que esteve muito presente esse ano no Brasil, principalmente devido à pandemia, que é o futuro do trabalho de entregadores e de motoristas. Então, de um lado, você tem, como bem mostrou o Casilli, empresas como o Uber, terceirizando trabalhadores, muitos deles da Venezuela, para treinar dados para carros autônomos. E um dado que é interessante também é como esses carros autônomos, principalmente da Uber, já tem uma série de estudos e matérias de que há uma incorporação de um racismo algorítmico, de maneira que eles tendem a atropelar mais pessoas negras do que brancas. Ou seja, tem outros dilemas também direcionados a essa força de trabalho. Em relação aos entregadores, tem uma expressão que foi muito usada depois da greve dos entregadores no Brasil, pelas pessoas de direita, que é assim, olha, vocês querem direitos, agora acabou tudo porque vão ser substituídos por drones. E essa substituição dos entregadores por drones, com também uma ilusão, como se o drone fosse o Papai Noel que fosse entregar o almoço na nossa janela. E o que a gente tem visto em outros países, no Brasil isso já foi autorizado pela ANAC, o uso de drones por empresas como a iFood, mas está em período de teste. Em outros países, o que tem acontecido é o entregador cada vez mais exprimido em pequenas distâncias e a substituição não exatamente por um drone, mas por trabalhadores que vão supervisionar esses drones em plataformas de microtasks ou de alguma coisa nesse sentido. E daí que eu tenho, acompanhando o trabalho do Casilli, dito que a crescente taskificação do trabalho é a próxima etapa, ou é a consolidação da plataformização. A gente está cada vez mais exprimido em microtarefas como algo próprio do futuro do trabalho, que é algo que o Casilli, a Paula Tubaro e outros colegas vão falar em um texto recente publicado por eles. Algumas questões conceituais que eu acrescentaria em relação à plataformização, eu acrescentaria a própria relação dessa dataficação com a financiarização, a forma de dados como capital, que de uma maneira está incluído no argumento, mas eu geralmente tento colocar isso também como um ponto central, com a própria racionalidade neoliberal, e da plataformização como uma crescente dependência dessas plataformas e seus mecanismos para conseguir alguma atividade de trabalho. E como cada plataforma tem os seus mecanismos, né? Às vezes, embora o Antônio tenha falado de várias plataformas, elas têm os moderadores, cada uma tem mecanismos que são interfaces e materialidades que também têm as suas distinções. Tem algumas questões conceituais também que eu fico pensando. Eu recebo muitas críticas de colegas pelo nome da newsletter, agora do nosso laboratório de pesquisa, se chamar Digilabor, porque o argumento é de que não existe trabalho digital, que o trabalho é sempre humano, que é por mediações ou por meio de tecnologias digitais, o que me faz pensar, e eu tenho respondido a isso, que eu penso o trabalho digital, mas como uma área de estudos, e como uma área realmente de pesquisa, do que exatamente algo para ser levado totalmente ao pé da letra, e que me parece que tem algo meio lost in translation, que é uma das questões que eu gostaria de endereçar para o Antônio, porque no próprio livro dele ele vai falar da diferença entre digital labor e travail numérique, por exemplo, em francês, o que seria até mais próximo ao português, porque a gente tem as diferenças entre o work e labor, e que no francês e que no português acabam indo tudo para a expressão de trabalho, e que tem as suas distinções. Uma outra questão conceitual, essa eu que venho martelando, alguns colegas do Brasil também, é que apesar de serem elucidativas, as metáforas de trabalho do clique, ou mesmo de microtasks ou microtarefas, de que talvez elas não nomeariam a complexidade do que são essas tarefas. E a gente anda pensando como difícil é nomear exatamente o que faz essas plataformas. E que, a meu ver, e eu entendo, obviamente, como metáforas, reduzir o trabalho dessas pessoas à questão do clique seria, às vezes, ignorar do ponto de vista que o próprio corpo das pessoas está envolvido e não somente uma questão de um clique. E falar em microtasks também me parece que é algo incompleto. Porém, tem um grande dilema aí que eu não sei realmente qual seria a melhor forma de nomear essas atividades de trabalho e nomear essas plataformas, se esse é um dilema ou se a gente cairia no fetichismo do conceito, em que a gente ficaria só tentando teorizar sobre isso e não exatamente indo à vida concreta, que são, enfim, como diz o nosso colega de muito tempo, Lukács, a ciência brota da vida, e a vida são as múltiplas determinações da vida social. Então, eu até tenho, às vezes, chamado de plataformas de inteligência artificial, mas não é exatamente isso. Então, é uma dúvida que a gente anda tendo. Outra questão que o Antônio traz muito bem são as questões geopolíticas. E talvez o que outros colegas têm chamado de o novo colonialismo, o colonialismo por meio de dados, enfim, com o nome que a gente for dar, mas que existe, de fato, uma geopolítica desse trabalho em plataforma, e que, por um lado, tem, do ponto de vista, considerando os termos da teoria da composição de classes, do ponto de vista da composição técnica do trabalho, muitas vezes o que uma pessoa no Brasil, na Venezuela, na Índia, na África do Sul faz é muito semelhante. Uso como exemplo o caso do projeto Fair Work, que eu estou coordenando no Brasil. O trabalho de um entregador no Brasil, na Inglaterra, na África do Sul, a questão da composição técnica do trabalho são muito semelhantes, de maneira que daria para pensar numa articulação ou de uma circulação na luta dos trabalhadores. Mas há pontos, usando essa mesma tipologia da teoria da composição de classe. Na composição social e política, e questões jurídicas, questões mesmo da vida de trabalho das pessoas, que são muito diferentes. E até tem sido interessante participar desse projeto, porque, por um lado, antes eu às vezes considerava, não, existem especificidades latino-americanas ou do sul global em relação ao trabalho em plataforma. Primeiro, numa aventura com o Jack Till, a gente começa a problematizar essa própria noção de sul global, que às vezes tenta aglutinar coisas muito diferentes, como Brasil e China. Às vezes você se coloca a Austrália no meio desse combo chamado sul global, e que acaba não sendo tão explicativo. Por outro, a gente tem provocado o quanto às vezes nós, da América Latina, nos pensamos como os específicos, e aí o default é sempre o norte global. E como se não tivessem especificidades no norte global, na Europa e na América do Norte. E eu tenho dito que, por exemplo, a expressão gig economy não nos explica atualmente, porque a história da economia brasileira é uma grande gig economy, e de muitos países pelo mundo, e que essa talvez seja uma especificidade do norte global. E uma provocação que eu tenho feito é que não existe realmente, e eu acho que isso o Casilli fala mais no livro dele, que não existe um universalismo direcionado ao trabalho em plataforma. Partindo disso e da grande exposição do Antônio, eu fiquei pensando em qual tem sido uma agenda de pesquisa envolvendo o trabalho em inteligência artificial. Quais os próximos passos, o que ainda não foi coberto, quais são os blind spots. O Brasil tem produzido algumas coisas nesse sentido. Eu gostaria de destacar colegas que têm trabalhado com essa questão. Primeiro, o Renan Calil, que na tese de doutorado dele, não só com brasileiros, mas também brasileiros da Mechanical Turk. E neste ano foi publicado um artigo do Bruno Moreschi, do Gabriel Pereira e outros colegas, que tem feito um belo trabalho no grupo de artes e inteligência artificial da USP, com outros artigos em andamento, por exemplo, as mulheres Turkers, e a ideia de mapear um perfil de Turkers, e também envolvendo um trabalho artístico em torno da própria intervenção desses trabalhadores. Recomendo que vocês sigam o trabalho do Gaia, da USP. Tem um outro colega, o Matheus Viana Braz, que deve estar nos assistindo, que tem feito um enorme trabalho de ver quais plataformas de microtrabalho, suas diferentes ramificações atuam no Brasil. O Matheus deve publicar um texto em breve falando sobre o cenário do microtrabalho, das plataformas de microtrabalho no Brasil. Eu e um colega, William Araújo, vamos publicar num livro, AI for Everyone, da Universidade de Westminster, também uma pesquisa sobre trabalhadores brasileiros da Appen e da Lionbridge, também com muitas semelhanças e algumas questões de como que os trabalhadores criam estratégias para burlar muitas vezes esses sistemas. Eu não falo alemão, mas não tem problema, vou me cadastrar mesmo assim, boto no Google Translator. Quer dizer, de que maneiras que os trabalhadores não são amorfos a isso, e como não existe um só cenário nisso. Uma das coisas que a gente viu nessa pesquisa é como esses trabalhadores se apresentam no LinkedIn, que muitas vezes é um orgulho para eles. Isso me leva muito ao trabalho de colegas das Filipinas, como o Cheryl Soriano, de que às vezes alguns trabalhadores do chamado sul global eles se sentem parte de um time mundial de trabalhadores, de world class workers, e eles se apresentam muitas vezes assim: eu treino inteligência artificial, eu trabalho para a inteligência artificial. O que, de uma maneira, também é uma maneira de eles visibilizarem ou também de lutarem contra a própria invisibilidade dessas atividades de trabalho. Tem até algo que a gente fala na pesquisa, que é de uma grande discussão no grupo do Facebook deles. Como que vocês falam para os seus pais, para suas famílias, o que vocês fazem? Aí um deles falou assim: eu trabalho com inteligência artificial, algo ultra secreto. E essa questão realmente quase, e também às vezes ratificando esse aspecto meio hollywoodiano externamente, mesmo eles sabendo que não se trata nada de um filme de Hollywood. Agora a gente está numa pesquisa, a partir de um grant que a gente ganhou da Universidade de Cambridge, entendendo mulheres brasileiras em distintas plataformas de microtrabalho. E aí foi que a gente entrou mais fundo nas plataformas de fazendas de cliques no Brasil. E são as genuinamente brasileiras. Tem várias dessas de fazendas de clique. Teve um papel forte nas eleições, aqui muitos candidatos a prefeito usando dessa plataforma, influências, duplas sertanejas, e me parece que tem perfis muito diferentes aqui no Brasil, depois a gente pode ouvir o Antônio, entre quem trabalha para plataformas tipo Mechanical Turk e Appen e quem trabalha para as plataformas de fazendas de clique, em que há vendas de perfis fakes, venda de bots, o que me leva também a perguntar o papel dessas plataformas de fazenda de clique na circulação de fake news e na circulação de desinformação. Me parece que esse ainda é um ponto cego na pesquisa sobre fake news e desinformação, que é esse trabalho invisível. Eu só tenho, por enquanto, duas referências, que é a palestra que o Casilli deu, Fake News, Digital Label Behind Fake News, e um relatório do Jonathan Ong, em que ele fala disso, e do Jason Cabanes, em que ele fala das redes de desinformação e do trabalho invisível também por trás disso. Já não estou terminando já. E aí, outras provocações que eu tenho feito é que não existe sistema publicitário hoje, não é possível ter nenhum sistema midiático sem esse trabalho invisível, porque você tem avaliação de publicidade, os assistentes virtuais também têm trabalhadores terceirizados que transcrevem esses dados. Não é possível hoje pensar em comunicação sem pensar esse trabalho invisível que alimenta a inteligência artificial. E aí uma outra pergunta que sempre vem é para onde vamos? Né? Em que medida que a organização desses trabalhadores já há algum tempo, a Lili Irani fala disso já há um bom tempo, tem tentativas de criação de autogestão desses tipos de plataforma, e tem, não só nesse ponto de vista, mas em outros, o que se chama de cooperativismo de plataforma, que tem chamado mais recentemente de plataformas de propriedade de trabalhadores. Aí eu destaco um caso só, que é não exatamente de microtrabalho, mas que nos faz pensar a questão dos dados, que é a Driver Seat, uma cooperativa de dados de motoristas que trabalham para as grandes plataformas, tipo Uber, mas que coletam os dados para eles e vendem para agências ou instituições públicas por um preço mais baixo do que da Uber, e acabam ganhando dinheiro coletivamente a partir dos seus próprios dados. Isso também leva a uma política urbana com menos custos e que seja, de alguma maneira, mais ligada ao desenvolvimento sustentável. Então, tem tudo aí ligado a tecnologias não alinhadas, e não é possível pensar em plataformas de propriedade de trabalhadores sem pensar esse regime e as políticas de algoritmos e dados. E aí eu sempre digo que o trabalho em plataformas é um grande laboratório da luta de classes e de outras expressões. Então, a gente precisa experimentar formas também de ação e de construção de essas a partir deste cenário, para a gente não achar que é uma terra arrasada. Acho que esse é o nosso desafio, esse é um comentário não estruturado em relação à fala do professor Antônio Casilli. E aí eu direciono, ele ouviu e entendeu algumas partes que eu falei, Eu vou deixar ele livre para comentar algumas delas, mas eu vou direcionar algumas para esse início de conversa. Uma delas, eu vou falar em inglês para ele entender melhor. First of all, what are the blind spots on AI labor research? What is the future of research in this area?
I think, Rafael, thank you very much. Okay. I think that you don't need to translate. I get a grasp of what you asked, and I think that also in order to allow everybody to ask questions and participate in the conversation, I will try and answer as quickly and synthetically as possible. First of all, thank you very much. I really thank you very much, Susanna Hoke, for the invitation, for the entire coordination of this event. Rafaela, I think that at the beginning, when you announced that you were going to do a provocation, I kind of said, oh my God, I hope that my Portuguese is good enough to understand the provocation. And I'm afraid that I didn't get it entirely, because all the questions you asked were questions that, in my opinion, first of all, they open to answers on which I think you and I will not be in disagreement. So let me try and address some of the points that you raised. And if you want to translate bits of my answers, please feel free to stop me. Just raise your finger and I will stop. Okay. First of all, the very notion of digital labor. I understand that you yourself have been criticized for choosing this title for your research group. Myself, I've been at the center of a controversy in France for 5 years, since the publication of a book whose title was Qu'est-ce que le digital labor? What is digital labor? And it is not a lazy question. It's not just about terminology and about semantics. It is an important question, because in somebody's opinion, to some people, digital means immaterial. And immaterial labor has been, first of all, already studied all throughout the 2000s and also the end of the 1990s of the previous century. And it has already been criticized, and it has been limited to some specific forms of labor. For instance, the labor of freelancers, of consultants, of artists who are in cultural industries. These are not the people you and I and all our colleagues study. What we study is a vast and complex fabric of different types of labor that include, on the one side, riders for delivery services, logistics services mainly. Then you have the logistics of data. These are the data workers, the micro workers, the people who do very small tasks. And then finally, you have something that has to do with social networking. You have moderators, you have influencers too, and producers and stuff like this. So, what is the thing that puts all these persons together? In my opinion, digital is important as an adjective, because digital, the etymology of digital goes back to the Latin word for finger, ditus. Digitus, which means basically the finger that clicks on things, which is why for the French I decided to talk either about digital labor and travail digital and not numérique. Numérique in French means digital, but it means the digital as it is envisioned by engineers, as it is envisioned by experts. Okay. So you want to ask a question? No, you want to translate parts of this. Okay, just let me finish. Let me finish this sentence. But I decided to insist on digital labor, travail digital, because I insist on the materiality of this labor. This is production of data, but it is done in a material fashion, in a material way. Please.
Muito bem. Eu vou agora dizer o que ele não disse, estou brincando. Bom, ele primeiro comentou, vou dizer em linhas gerais, dizendo que essa noção de trabalho digital, que eu disse que eu sou muito bombardeado por aqui, esses dias até no IHU alguém disse que digilabor era uma expressão colonial. Bom, só traduzindo e não comentando. O Antônio fala que trabalho digital não é uma questão só semântica, mas é uma questão muito importante de ser discutida, e que as pessoas confundem colocando que o digital é imaterial, enquanto ele insiste numa noção de que o digital, inclusive pela questão do dígito e do digitar, também como algo muito material, ele insiste nas materialidades do trabalho digital e como que o numérique na França é algo próprio dos engenheiros e do modo dos engenheiros compreenderem essa questão, e por isso ele insiste na palavra digital, não para dizer o imaterial, mas para também se referir ao trabalho de freelancers, artistas, pessoas das indústrias culturais, numa fábrica vasta e complexa dos diferentes tipos de trabalho, nos trabalhadores de dados, nos microtrabalhadores, nos próprios entregadores. Então, essa é a resposta, em geral, das críticas ao trabalho digital, e que ele tem, inclusive, um texto, um livro chamado O que é o Trabalho Digital, que eu indico para as pessoas lerem.
Yeah. And before I answer the other question, which is what is to be done, what parts of research do we have to, what fields of research do we have to develop, I would like also to address another thing, another point that you raised, which is why do we insist on micro work, micro tasks, while we discover every day that these tasks are sometimes long, sometimes complicated, complex, and they demand a lot of skills from the persons, from the workers who actually perform them. And this is an actual question, and a question that I would like to address more specifically in the future in an article. And my answer, my quick answer, is that these are described as micro tasks by the platforms themselves and by tech companies. And this is in itself is a strategy, and a capitalistic and ideologically driven strategy that is aimed at reducing the reward, the remuneration, the salary for the amount of money they pay for these tasks. Just to give you a quick example, nowadays tagging an image for a computer vision system of a self-driving car can take up to 10-20 minutes, yet it is described as a micro task. Sometimes it takes even longer, and when it comes to the skills that are required, well, there are a lot of skills. First of all, you have to be digitally literate. It means you have to be good at using your computer or your mobile phone or your tablet. Then you have to be good at using the platform you use. You have to navigate through a lot of instructions, tutorials, and you also have to develop some skills which are good for you not to be at the end, not to find yourself working too much for the very small amount of money. It's an art, it's a craft, and this craft is not recognized by the capitalistic platforms. And this is why they insist on saying that this is micro work and this is unskilled labor. And this has been going on for decades, even for more than that, because this type of labor, the labor connected to data, has a longer story than that. And so again, I insist on the fact that using the word microtask is in itself problematic, and we need to address it. And this is something that opens up an avenue for research in itself. Do you want to translate this, or do you think that, yeah, okay.
Bom, o Antônio fala de por que insiste, ele insiste que as questões de microtrabalho, de microtarefas, têm altas habilidades, skills envolvidas nessas tarefas, e que são as plataformas que chamam essas tarefas de microtarefas ou de microtrabalho, como uma estratégia ideológica capitalista para renomear esses trabalhos e também reduzir, inclusive, o salário e a remuneração desses trabalhadores, e que é uma estratégia para mostrar, em que eles mostrariam que não precisaria de nenhuma habilidade para você ganhar essas tarefas, fazendo uma liberdade criativa, o que se diz no Brasil de ganhe dinheiro sem esforço, ganhe dinheiro sem precisar de muitas coisas. E ele tem insistido de que os trabalhadores precisam de muitas habilidades, como literacia digital, saber usar bem o computador, fazer um bom uso das plataformas, e que muitas vezes trabalhar nas plataformas é uma arte, e que o trabalho com dados tem uma historicidade, tem uma longa história, e que não nasceu hoje. E que essa questão de pensar as skills envolvidas no trabalho em plataformas que envolvem produção de dados para inteligência artificial abre uma avenida para uma agenda de pesquisa nessa área.
Okay, and now the final question, I hope, I think, but anyways, if there are other questions, please ask them. The question is, what is to be done? What do we still need to study? Of course, I mean, yourself, you highlighted the importance of exploring the links between financiarization and platformization. This is something that personally is out of my field of research. I used to be an economist 25 years ago. I've stopped it, and it is a choice that I've made. But anyway, it is an important part. The second interesting and extremely promising field of research concerns the actual link between machine learning production and digital labor. Because so far we have a vague idea. We as researchers, you, I, and all our colleagues are basically, trying to discover what's going on inside Google. And the few times that we actually have a grasp of what is happening is because we interview people who are whistleblowers, who decide to speak up and to explain what's happening inside. But this is not enough, especially because even for those who work inside Google, Apple, Amazon, and so on, the process is not clear. Many of the engineers or computer developers or computer scientists I speak to consider data as something that falls from the sky. They do not actually think that data are produced by human beings and annotated and so on and so on. So it is a matter of studying what they do, but it is also a matter of teaching them to see what they do. And this is the first thing. And the second interesting and extremely promising field of research is actually proceeding in mapping worldwide digital labor. First of all, I think that there is a very promising book that is coming out by Kate Crawford, The Atlas of AI, that I'm looking forward to reading. But of course, there are the works of Nick Coldry, Ulises Mejias, Mark Graham and his team. Ourselves, we are now working on Latin America. A few days ago, we actually launched this research called TRIA, on el trabajo de la inteligencia artificial on Spanish-speaking countries in Latin America. We are working on Africa. This is mainly to say that, first of all, we have to create alliances between international researchers on this field, taking into account the fact that we cannot aspire to any position of primacy just because we live, I don't know, in Europe, or some of our colleagues live in Canada or in the US, and we also have to renounce some, let's say, colonial or post-colonial ways of thinking or of acting. And so opening a frank and honest dialogue about some of the things that we have mentioned, even the very name of the field we're in. Do we actually have to call it digital labor? Do we have to go on explaining, adopting this kind of approach, which is very European, the only possible labor is the labor of somebody who is employed full-time, formally, and and for a lifetime and permanent job. So this is a definitely interesting research. And then the final part, but this is just for me because I'm really going deeper and deeper into these. The third field of research is the history of what we do, because we tend to consider that platform labor is something that popped up in the 21st century, but it has a long history. A very long history, several centuries ago, even before the existence of digital computers and electronic computers, even before the existence of actual technologies like the ones that we use, we already were doing some of the work that is now shaping up the digital labor as we know it. I'm done.
Muito obrigado, Antônio. Ele agora falou de tópicos centrais para o futuro da pesquisa em trabalho e inteligência artificial. Primeiro, ele ressaltou o link que eu tinha feito entre financiarização e plataformização. Ele falou que chegou a ser economista no passado. Um parênteses, eu tenho gostado muito do trabalho do Jaitan Sadovski nessa área. No Brasil, um colega que não estuda trabalho, mas fez um livro belíssimo sobre Bitcoin, que é o Edemilson Paraná, e tem um livro traduzido para o inglês também sobre finança digitalizada, que é sensacional. Um segundo ponto que ele destaca são as relações entre a produção de machine learning, de aprendizado de máquina, e o trabalho digital, e como a gente faz, a gente só sabe muito, muito pouco o que se passa em empresas como o Google. E essas empresas como Google e Amazon, o processo não é claro, e que tem muito a ser investigado nessas relações. Um terceiro ponto é mapear o cenário de trabalho digital no mundo inteiro, envolvendo inclusive as plataformas de microtrabalho. Ele cita a Kate Crawford, que tem um texto traduzido para o português, chamado Anatomia de uma Inteligência Artificial. Aliás, recomendo muito a leitura desse texto. Ressalta os trabalhos do Nick Coldry e do Ulisses Merrias, que já esteve com a gente algumas vezes, já esteve com o Antônio recentemente também no mês passado. O trabalho do Mark Grohmann, que é o diretor do projeto Fair Work, que a gente faz parte, e de que essa é uma tarefa que a gente deve fazer no sentido de criar alianças entre pesquisadores internacionais. Aí também um outro parênteses, é um tradutor comentador, que é o trabalho que o Antônio tem feito na Europa, de uma rede internacional, de uma rede europeia e internacional, são duas dimensões, dos pesquisadores em trabalho digital, que eu acho que é uma construção também coletiva, e provoca dizendo que é preciso renunciar a formas de pensar ou agir coloniais ou pós-coloniais por parte de pesquisadores que vêm da Europa, dos Estados Unidos e do Canadá. E, por último, ele ressalta o aspecto das histórias, e da história, um aspecto histórico envolvendo inteligência artificial e o trabalho digital, como muito antes de pensar a computação, já se falava e já se pensava nessas questões. E o meu comentário sobre isso é que esse projeto que a gente está em Cambridge, do Histories of AI, o Antônio será muito bem-vindo também para as discussões. E no ano que vem, aqui na Unisinos, a gente vai fazer um evento também com eles, chamado Histories of AI, South North Dialogue. E vai ser muito bom. Muito obrigado. Suzana, the floor is yours.
Então, muitíssimo obrigado, professor Rafael, e especialmente ao nosso convidado internacional, que fez questão de poder estar presente, de ler em português, de escutar em português, né?
Pero não de falar em português, infelizmente.
Mas já está falando em português. Então, na próxima conferência do professor vai ser em português, porque ele está querendo vir para o Brasil para aprender português. Esperemos que a pandemia permita, e se não, fará uma visita virtual, como estamos fazendo tantas vezes. Un grand merci, monsieur. Nós queremos também agradecer a todas as pessoas que, ao vivo, têm participado deste debate e também aquelas pessoas que vão ser muitas, que vão participar, compartilhar, comentar após esse evento, pois isso aqui fica disponível no YouTube. Queremos também convidar, que já que esta é a 4ª conferência, nós temos disponíveis as 3 anteriores deste simpósio, e se tudo der certo, no próximo semestre teremos 1 ou 2 a mais para completar este rico debate que está sempre em aberto e se atualizando. Professor Casilli, muito obrigado. Professor Rafael, o nosso obrigado. A todos os participantes, através do CEPAT do IHU, muito obrigada e até uma próxima vez.